If I told you not to think about an elephant, what pops up in your mind? Exactly, an elephant. That's how our brains work. We don't like being told what not to do. And here's the funny thing. We are told not to compare ourselves with others. But deep down, we all still do. That's why today we are going to look into net worth in Germany by age to help you see where do you stand. Because the truth is, most of us wonder, are you closer to the 25-year-old with just 15,000 euros in net worth or the 60-year-old sitting on 300,000 euros? The gap is massive. But the wealth story in Germany isn't just about age. When you add in factors like immigration, background, location, and income levels, the picture gets even more surprising. By the way, if you're new to the channel, I'm Essen. For the past 5 years, I've been digging into how wealth is really built in Germany, testing, researching, and even making mistakes myself. In this video, I'll break down the numbers, reveal who's actually wealthier, and show you what this means for your own path to financial freedom in Germany. Across Germany, wealth grows with age. That might sound obvious. The longer you live, the more time you've had to earn and save. But the scale of the difference is shocking. Recent Bundesbank data shows average household has around 325,000 euros in assets. But averages hide the truth. If you're under 25, the typical net worth is just 11,000 euros. In your 30s, you're still in the tens of thousands. But then something drastic happens. By your 50s, the median household is sitting at 240,000 euros. That's more than 10 times what the under 35 crowd has. Why does this explosion happen in the 50s? What suddenly turns middle-aged Germans into the wealthiest group? I'll share that in a moment, but first, let's see how this life cycle unfolds. Picture your financial journey like climbing a hill. In your 20s and 30s, you're carrying a backpack full of debt, low wages, and high living costs. Progress feels slow, but in your 40s and 50s, you start moving faster. Your salary rises, and you may buy a home, and your savings finally begin compounding. By the time you hit 55 to 64 years, most Germans have paid off mortgages, paid pensions, and own significant assets. That's why this group is at the peak. They are the richest Germans by far. Now here's the problem. Wealth then declines in old age. Once you reach your late 60s and 70s, savings get drawn down. Yet even then, the elderly are much wealthier than young adults. A 75-year-old today has on average 172,000 euros, still 10 times more than many 30-year-olds. So the curve is clear. Young is poor, middle age is rich, retirees slightly less rich. The big secret? The winners are those who manage to get property and investments in their prime working years. This is where the sponsor of today's video, Trading 212, can be a game changer. Trading 212 is a truly commission-free investment app. Unlike a lot of platforms that sneak in hidden fees or make it unnecessarily complicated, Trading 212 offers a truly zero commission experience with no fees to buy or sell stocks or ETFs. Even in Germany, the setup is super easy. You can open an account directly from your phone, and the app is available in English, German, and several other languages, which is great for expats or anyone comfortable navigating in English. And here's what I really like about it. It's perfect for beginners. You don't have to jump in with real money right away. The app has a built-in paper trading mode, which lets you practice buying and selling stocks and ETFs with virtual money. So you can build your confidence, test strategies, and learn how investing works without risk. When you're ready to start with real money, here's the best part. Trading 212 is giving you a free fractional share worth up to 100 euros. If you sign up using the link in the description and use the sponsored code ESSEN, all you need to do is fund your account with at least 1 euro within the first 10 days, and you'll get a free fractional share worth between 8 and 100 euros. It could be a piece of Apple, Tesla, or something else. It's completely random, but it's yours to keep, and it's a great way to kick off your portfolio. And that brings us to the next question. What happens if you're not starting at the same line? What if you move to Germany in your 20s or 30s without family assets or inherited wealth? Here's where it gets really interesting. Germany has millions of people with migration backgrounds, and the wealth numbers for those households look very different. Studies show that immigrant families have about half the wealth of native Germans. If the typical German has 100,000 euros, the average immigrant has closer to 50,000 euros. In some cases, the gap is even wider. So why does this gap exist? And is it permanent? There isn't one single reason. Instead, it's a mix of structural factors. Imagine two families in Germany. Both are 40 years old, both working hard, both raising kids. The first family has been here for generations. Over the years, they've bought a home, built up pensions, and invested a little. By 40, they've got some equity, some savings, and maybe even a portfolio. Now picture the second family. They've arrived in Germany in their early 30s. Starting fresh meant no decades of savings to fall back on. Maybe their degrees took years to get recognized, so they started out in lower paying jobs. They're still renting, and remember, renters in Germany have a median wealth of just 18,000 euros, while homeowners sit around 450,000 euros. Add that to the habit of keeping cash or sending money abroad instead of investing. And it's easy to see why even with a solid income, they're still building slowly. By age 40, the first family might be 50 to 100,000 euros ahead. Not because they work harder, but because of structural factors. Time in the country, income levels, housing, and investing habits make a huge difference in how wealth builds over the decades. Now here's the interesting part. When researchers control for age, wealth, and income, the migrant wealth gap shrinks dramatically. Meaning the system isn't punishing migrants for being migrants. It's about starting later, earning less early on, and not owning property. So migrants are poorer mainly because of structural disadvantages, not personal failings. But will second-generation migrants, the kids of immigrants, finally catch up? Or will this gap persist into the future? There's some good news here. Younger migrants born in Germany are doing better than their parents. They are more likely to get higher education, enter skilled jobs, and build wealth. The catch? Home ownership rates are still much lower, which keeps the wealth gap alive. Even migrants from wealthier countries only have about 75% of the wealth of natives. Migrants from poorer countries, sometimes as little as 1/3. So while progress is happening, the catching up is slow. And this leaves us with an important question. What does all of this mean for you if you're trying to build wealth in Germany? Well, in Germany, your wealth is mostly determined by age and home ownership. If you're young, you're almost certainly poor compared to older group. That's not a personal failure, it's the system. But if you're also a migrant, you may be starting from even further behind. The challenge is bigger, but not impossible. There are certain things you can do to reduce the gap, like focus on stable income growth early. Consider property ownership as a long-term wealth engine. Start investing even small amounts in appreciating assets. Be aware that comparison to 50 and 60-year-olds are unfair. You're not competing with them. You're just at a different stage of the curve. So yes, Germans in their 50s and 60s hold most wealth, mostly thanks to property ownership and decades of compounding. Migrant families on average still lag behind, but their second generation is closing the gap. And if there's one thing the numbers prove, it's this. Age and being German-born are the strongest predictors of wealth in this country. But these averages are not your destiny. Your personal net worth doesn't have to look like the typical curve. If you start building wealth earlier, invest consistently, and take steps like buying property when it makes sense, can flip the script and land you ahead of the averages. So when you ask, where do I stand compared to others my age in Germany? The real question is, where do you want to stand 5, 10, or 20 years from now? Because the gap isn't permanent. And if you understand the rules of the game, you can absolutely change your position on that chart. The first step is to start investing. So don't forget to get your free stock with Trading 212 when you sign up and add at least €1 within the first 10 days. In this video, I share how to invest your first €1,000 in Germany. And in this video, I share the 5 levels of wealth in Germany and how to move up.